Every time we see a saloon in a Western film, it seems like a fun place. Music playing, cards on the table, whiskey in the glass, beautiful women circulating among the men. Every now and then a fight breaks out. A table turns. Someone pulls a gun. The sheriff shows up and resolves everything. It looks exciting. It feels like an adventure. It looks like the kind of place we would like to be, even if it was just for one night. The films did an incredible job of transforming the saloon into an entertainment stage, a setting where interesting things happened and where the good guy always came out on top. But the reality was completely different. The saloon of the Old West was, without any exaggeration, the most dangerous place a common man could enter. It wasn't fun. It was risky. A man could enter a saloon after a day's work just wanting to have a drink and relax, and leave without a penny in his pocket, with a knife in his ribs, or simply not leave at all, because many didn't go out. Today we will understand why entering those swinging doors was one of the most dangerous decisions a man could make in the Old West. The first danger of the saloon was the most obvious, the alcohol. And it wasn't just any alcohol. What was served in the saloons of the Old West was something that would make any cheap drink today seem sophisticated. Most saloons didn't sell real whiskey. He sold a homemade mixture made with very low-quality grain alcohol, diluted with water and colored with tobacco, molasses, burnt sugar, or even worse substances. In some cases, they added cayenne pepper for heat, gunpowder for strength, or even paint for color. This is not an exaggeration. There are records from the time that describe these practices in detail. The names that the cowboys themselves gave to these drinks said it all. Rotgut, which means rots the guts. Coffin varnish, coffin varnish. Skullbender, skullbender. They weren't affectionate nicknames. They were warnings. But the men drank anyway. They drank because it was what they had. They drank because life was too hard to face sober. They drank because after 12 hours of manual labor, the body asked for anything that would make the pain stop, even if it was for a few hours. And the problem with alcohol wasn't just what it did to the body. It was what he did with his mind. Men who were already living on the edge, exhausted, frustrated, many of them armed, all together in a closed space, drinking a substance that eliminated any restraint on their behavior. This combination was explosive, and it exploded every night in practically every saloon in the Old West. A wrong word, a crooked look, a bump at the wrong time, anything was a reason for a fight to start. And when the fight started, there were no rules. It wasn't the organized exchange of punches that the movies show. It was raw, rapid, and often fatal violence. Bottles were broken over the head, stabbed in the back, shots fired in the middle of the chaos that hit anyone, including those who had nothing to do with the story. A man could be sitting in the corner, quietly drinking his glass, and be shot by a stray gun from a fight that broke out on the other side of the saloon. And die right there on the dirty floor without anyone even knowing his name. Violence inside saloons was so routine that the busiest cities in the West had an almost automatic procedure for dealing with it. When someone died in a saloon, the body was dragged out, taken to the nearest undertaker, and the night continued. The piano started playing again, the glasses were refilled, and within a few minutes no one spoke about it again. Death in a saloon was not an extraordinary event. It was part of the normal functioning of the place, as common as a bottle breaking or a table overturning. Some saloons had bullet holes in the walls, pillars, and ceilings. Not as decoration, as history. Each mark was a real shot fired on a real night at a real person, and no one bothered to fix it. The marks remained there, like silent reminders that this place was not for the faint of heart. The second great danger of the saloon was gambling. And when I talk about gaming, I'm not talking about a friendly game of cards between friends. I'm talking about tables where men bet everything they had. The wages of weeks, entire months of work, horses, weapons, land, everything could go on the table in a single night. Poker was the most popular game, but it was not the only one. Faro, Assemble, 21, Dice. There were many options, and they all had something in common. They were dominated by professional cheats. The cheaters, called card sharps or tintornos, were guys who lived exclusively from this. They traveled from town to town, from saloon to saloon, making a living by cheating other men at gambling. They were skilled with their hands. They knew how to hide cards up their sleeves, mark decks, manipulate dice. They sat at the table with a friendly smile and a calm manner, as if they were just another player trying their luck. But there was no luck at all. The game was decided before it started. And the common cowboy, tired, drunk, with no card skills at all, was the perfect prey. I lost everything without realizing I was being stolen. And by the time I realized, it was usually too late. Because accusing someone of cheating in a saloon was almost a death sentence. If one man pointed the finger and said the other was cheating in the game, the situation immediately escalated. The accused felt offended, even if he was guilty. The accuser needed to prove, and proving meant confrontation. Knives were drawn, guns pointed, and in a matter of seconds, what was a card table turned into a crime scene. Some of the most famous deaths in the Old West happened just like that, at poker tables, because of accusations of cheating. Wild Bill Hickok, one of the West's best-known names, was shot in the back while playing poker in a Deadwood saloon. He was holding a pair of aces and a pair of eights. This hand was forever known as the dead man's hand. And it wasn't the only death like this. It was just the most famous, but the danger of the game didn't end at the table. It ended outside. A man who lost everything at gambling left the saloon with nothing. No money, no horse, no prospects. And a man with nothing in the Wild West was a dangerous man. Many who lost everything turned to crime. They robbed travelers on the roads, robbed stores, invaded ranches. Others returned to the saloon with a gun, looking for the guy who had defeated them at the table. Revenge was a cycle that fed itself. The game generated loss, loss generated anger, anger generated violence, violence generated more death. And it all started inside those wooden walls. There were also scams that went beyond cards. Many saloons offered games that were completely handled by the house. Roulettes with hidden mechanisms, dice with altered weight, faro tables where the dealer controlled each outcome. The average player didn't stand a chance. I went in thinking I was going to try my luck and came out clean without really understanding what happened. And the money he lost went straight into the pocket of the saloon owner, who used gambling as the establishment's main source of profit. Drinking made money, but gambling made money. And to protect that fortune, saloon owners hired armed men who ensured no one questioned the results. Complaining about a rigged game was as dangerous as accusing someone of cheating. The result was the same: silence or violence. The third danger was something that films rarely show honestly. The saloon women, they weren't those glamorous figures with shiny dresses and perfect smiles that Hollywood invented. Most were women in desperate situations, with no other options, forced to work in saloons and brothels because society at the time simply offered no alternatives. Many were immigrants who didn't speak English, widows who lost everything, young people who fled even worse situations. And these women, in addition to everything they already suffered, were often the center of conflicts between men, fights over jealousy, over attention, over possession, drunk men who treated these women like property and were willing to kill for something that was never theirs. Many deaths in saloons occurred not from gambling, not from insults, but from disputes involving women. And the women themselves were the ones who suffered most in these situations, attacked, threatened, discarded, when they were no longer useful. The fourth danger was the structure of the saloon itself. Everything was made of wood: the floor, the walls, the ceiling, the counter, the tables, the chairs. Dry, old wood covered in spilled alcohol and grease, a keg of powder waiting for a spark. And there was no shortage of sparks. Kerosene lamps hung on the walls, candles on the tables, cigars and cigarettes lit everywhere. All it took was one oversight: a lamp that fell, a cigar that rolled into the wrong place, and the entire saloon caught fire in a matter of minutes. And when a saloon caught fire, it didn't catch fire by itself. The buildings were stuck together, without space, without fire protection, without anything. A saloon on fire meant an entire street on fire. It meant an entire city on fire. Cities like Deadwood, Tombstone, and Virginia City suffered devastating fires that started just like that. An accident inside a saloon that spread until there was nothing left. The fifth danger was the complete lack of law within the saloon. In theory, there were sheriffs, there were deputies, there were rules. In practice, inside the saloon, the law belonged to the strongest. Many sheriffs simply wouldn't enter saloons unless absolutely necessary. And necessary, for many of them, meant that someone was already dead. While the fight was just a fight, while the shots didn't reach. They pretended no one was important. The law looked the other way. In many towns, saloon owners had more power than the sheriff himself. They paid bribes, financed local political campaigns, and controlled the money that circulated in the city. And whoever controls the money controls the law. So inside those swinging doors, what counted was strength, the weapon, and the willingness to use it. There were cities that tried to ban guns inside saloons. Dodge City, for example, was famous for requiring visitors to surrender their weapons upon entering the city. But in practice, this rule was difficult to apply. Many men hid smaller weapons: knives, derringers, pocket revolvers. Others simply ignored the rule, and no one had the courage to confront them. The result was the same: a saloon full of armed, drunk, and unsupervised men. A time bomb that exploded every night. And it wasn't just customers who posed a danger. The saloon owners themselves and their employees were, in many cases, violent individuals with criminal pasts. Bartenders who carried guns behind the counter and didn't hesitate to use them. Security guards who solved problems with brute force, beating up problematic customers and throwing them out on the street like trash. Saloon owners who had competitors killed, who bribed authorities, who controlled the trafficking of drinks and women in their cities. The saloon wasn't just a place where bad things happened. It was, in many cases, the center of operations for all local crime. It was from within those walls that orders, plans, decisions that defined the fate of entire cities came from. There were also illnesses. A crowded saloon with poor ventilation, full of men coughing, spitting, sharing glasses and bottles, was the perfect environment for the spread of disease. Tuberculosis, influenza, smallpox, syphilis. Everyone circulated freely in those spaces. A man could walk into a saloon perfectly healthy and come out carrying a disease that would kill him within weeks, and I wouldn't even know where it got it. Women who worked in saloons were especially vulnerable. Venereal diseases spread without control, without treatment, without prevention. Many died young, consumed by diseases that could have been avoided if there had been any notion of hygiene or medical care, but there wasn't. The saloon was an environment where health was anyone's last concern. And even knowing all this, even knowing that they could lose their money, get stabbed, get a disease, or die in a fire, the men continued to enter the saloons every night. Why? Because they had nowhere else to go. The saloon was the only social space that existed for the common man in the Old West. It was the only place with light, with noise, with people, with life. Outside it was darkness, silence, solitude. And loneliness, in the Old West, killed in a different way. It killed inside. He killed slowly. He killed without leaving a visible mark, but he killed just the same. So the man preferred to risk his life inside the saloon, rather than die of loneliness outside. It was a choice between two types of danger, and most chose the danger that at least offered company, a full glass, and the illusion that, for a few hours, life was bearable. It was an exchange. The man traded security for belonging. I traded health for comfort. He exchanged years of life for moments of oblivion. And at that time, in that place, this exchange made all the sense in the world. Because what was the point of living longer if living meant just existing alone, in the dark, without anyone? The Old West Saloon was everything the movies show and everything the movies hide. It was fun and death in the same room. It was laughter and blood on the same floor. It was the place where a man could encounter the best and worst of human nature in the same night. It was dangerous, not for one reason, but for all reasons at once. Alcohol, gambling, weapons, lawlessness, fire, disease, violence. Everything together, everything mixed, everything compressed within 4 old wooden walls that could collapse or burn down at any moment. Next time you see that classic scene of the cowboy entering the saloon, pushing through the doors with confidence, remember one thing. Every time a real man did this, he was literally gambling with his life. I didn't know if I was going to go home. I didn't know if I would wake up the next day. I didn't know if that night would be the last, and he still got in. Because in the Wild West, living was already the biggest risk of all, and the saloon was just the place where this risk was most evident. And now I ask you, knowing all this, if you could go back in time and spend a single night in a real Wild West saloon, would you go in? Leave it in the comments.